It's another week inside the Limitless Leadership Lounge. I'm really excited for our conversation this week. Coach Jim Johnson and I are back for another week, and hopefully you're enjoying your summer. Hopefully you had some fun activities planned coming up later in the summer. But for now, we're excited to hopefully share some leadership insights with you, like always. And Coach is connected with our guest today, and he's ready to introduce her. So let's dive right in, Coach.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to speak to Dr. Hillary Cauthen on Zoom, and we're really excited to have her. So let me just share a little information about her and welcome her to the show. Dr. Hillary Cauthen has been involved in athletics since the age of 4. Her education began with a focus in sports psychology. Dr. Cauthen strongly believes in the practice of embracing personal growth, enhancing performance, and enriching one's passion for athletic and professional endeavors. Dr. Cauthen is the founder of the Texas Optimal Performance and Psychological Services. Her work with high performance is breaking down stigma across communities, which is highlighted in her book, Hello Trauma, Our Invisible Teammate. Dr. Cauthen has over 17 years of experience working in the field of sport and performance psychology. Dr. Cauthen is currently a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas. She is a certified mental performance consultant. Without any further ado, uh, Dr. Hillary, welcome to the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Thank you so much.
So we're looking forward and being a high school basketball coach for a long time. I know one of the things I share with young coaches is the fact that we spent a lot of time the second half of my career working on the mental piece as well as the physical piece. So that's, I know, right up your alley. So I'm
hmm
going to start with a question that would be not only for an athlete, but people in the leadership. We often see, and I know I ran into this a lot myself in working with young people, is that somebody that's pretty talented, whether they're an athlete or a leader or whatever, but loses their confidence. Tell us what you do to try to help that person gain back that uh, fleeting word, confidence.
Yeah, I think I first start with educating them on the term of confidence. For me, I specifically say it's situational. It's gonna ebb and flow. But truly, what we need to look at is like your self belief. And I always say, what's your belief bucket? And do we have evidence to prove that we are capable of doing the things that we want to do? And can we fill that belief bucket with small wins? And once the belief bucket is strong, I say, okay, now we just have to look at this situation and explore what's causing you to feel insecure and that you feel you perceived you lost confidence. And then once they feel they have ownership over that and they're like, no, I believe I'm really good at this. I just have some game day nerves, or I am fearing this failure or this evaluation of an upcoming presentation, then we can really hone in on the real skills to lock them through it. And their confidence will rise after they continue to look at that belief and say, no, I've done this time and time again. Here's the evidence of my success. And here's what it's going to be like if I go and complete this task at hand.
And how does athletic confidence transfer into the business world, the professional world, even the world of personal life as an adult?
Yeah, I think, with athletics, because it is so based on wins and losses and it's about your performance. And ideally, the athletes will experience some form of success more likely than they will experience a game of losing all the time. They gain this sense of ownership because of the skill acquisition, the confidence in the winning, the camaraderie, team cohesion that all builds this self esteem and self worth in these life lessons that we know Fortune 500 companies and other, domains really are excited by athletes, and we welcome that. We cherish that. We have already identified athletes as having a certain type of skills that are acquired that are favorable in high performing pressure situations. So it gives them a little step up that we're socializing them already to believe they're really great at things and that they can transition into these venues already. I would say caveat, we have to teach them as well because it's not as easy as you just jump right in and you can go be successful in the business world. But there is a sense of being in high performing situations, learning how to work through communication and problem solving that is very advantageous for life and business endeavors.
Very interesting. So, I obviously spent a long time working with high school basketball teams,
Mhm.
but because I do a lot of speaking now to both the athletic teams and a lot of businesses, and I'm curious because I know you have as well worked with various teams.
Mhm.
What have you found? Can you give us two or three key ingredients that you found the difference between teams that achieve very well, whether it's on the athletic field or court or, in the business world, as opposed to the teams that seem to flounder.
It really does start with this essence of culture. There has to be a belief that's bigger than the task at hand, right? You have to be working towards something greater than just simply dribbling the basketball, right? You have to believe in the mission. And if there's a core foundation of cultural pillars that everyone can believe in, and they know this is the standard of excellence, this is the expectations, and this is what I have to buy into to be successful, and then have that role clarity within that where everyone has a purpose. When you give everyone a purpose, whether you're the leading star or you're a manager on the team, and you value everyone at that same level, you will see loads of enhancement where people want to show up, they want to be appreciated, they're connected, they have value, and they're going to work harder for everyone around them because there's something bigger than just that one person who's the star.
It always fascinates me that you have talented teams. You have really, really talented teams. And you look at, both the men's and women's basketball tournaments, even just this past year, and a team like UConn who ends up winning the championship game, and their head coach, Gino Auriemma, right, who's won 12 championships. And obviously you have a ridiculous amount of talent throughout the country on other teams too, who they're going through and sometimes beating significantly, like they beat Dawn Staley in South Carolina yesterday. What separates the good from the great, I suppose, or the talented from the talented and also ridiculously successful?
Yeah, I think it's looking at specifically the basketball program, right, with UConn. I think that story was written. We could all see it, whether the press advocated for that and socialized that story with Paige, and what a storybook ending for her career. But UConn has had values, has had standards, has had significant success. The winningest coach in women's basketball, right? 12 national championships, and you win 11 out of the 12 times you've been there. 24 Final Fours. He was going up an extreme competitor who's already creating a dynasty and legacy in her program and dominated. Now, there was a shift. If you go back and watch all of the women's tournament, UConn was destined to win. They weren't coming back. They were in full belief of their mission and passion, and it was not one star player. There was multiple players. There was multiple rotations. There was a belief in what they wanted to do, and they were going to find a way no matter what. And I think rising to that momentum and that belief, I think anyone watching would know they were going to win. I mean, I don't think that anyone planned to see the pure domination. That was a very, very ridiculous score and blowout. But it wasn't one star player, and their star player didn't have a 40-point game like they did 3 games before, right? They had 12 points. So I think to me, these championship teams, it is not one person. It can never be one person, but it is a standard of excellence. And every player on that team discussed the standard and the pushing and the desire to drive and be your best set by their head coach. So there was a strong leader present in demanding what was their expectation, and that wasn't going to falter. And at the end of the day, when it was the final show, the quotes were, just go play like you need to play. If you play like you need to play, we'll do our job. And so to me, that's giving ownership now to the team to just play their game. But it was set by a leader at first.
Excellent. Well, tell us, I know you have a new book coming out. So tell us about the book's called Hello Trauma, Our Invisible Teammate. And tell us, what the reader is going to find from reading this book, and maybe even illustrate a story that you have in the book.
Yeah, so the book came out December 1st of 2023, so it's an exciting book. It's uses sport as a microcosm of society in there of storytelling, but you do not have to be an athlete. You can be an organizational leader. There's 2 parts about this book, and it was written partly because as much as I love the passion of sport can be really toxic and be really traumatic and be really detrimental to athletes' mental health, which is my specialty. And so I wanted to be able to highlight and give a voice to those that really don't speak out, didn't know how to speak out, couldn't make meaning of experiences they went through. And I wanted to be like, hey, this book will help you feel seen and heard. And for those that maybe feel like they've never experienced trauma, which is not true, they're going to actually now be able to relate to people who have, because we know 70% of US Americans have reported some experience of trauma. And for me, I also redefine the meaning of trauma because it's a very pop culture right now, this big T, little t. And I kind of just say, hey, trauma is stubbing your toe. Trauma is witnessing a car accident. It's a biological, physiological response. And so I really break down this aspect of trauma, take you through what a victim of trauma experiences, very similar to grief and loss, but it's the stages of trauma. And then use sport as a microcosm call to action where I'm saying, like, hey, if we don't get this right, you're reinforcing trauma to exist in any organization. And so then I give a step-by-step guide on how to work through stuff. But the stories in it, the first 12 chapters are very emotionally experiences. They start and end with a journal entry that draws you in and helps you feel what that emotional experience is. And then it breaks that down psychologically and then kind of ends again with another emotional hook. So you kind of keep this feel aspect to really connect with someone that might go through something.
Dr. Hillary Cauthen joins us. So, how about a time in your life, and maybe it could be something as simple as right stubbing a toe or something bigger. What was a trauma that you went through that inspired you to recognize some of the benefits and potential opportunities that lie within trauma?
I have two different experiences. One is like first myself as an athlete, right? Which looking back, you don't realize that this is traumatic or what this is doing for you, but it really did shape the trajectory of how I viewed sport, how I showed up in places, and how it really like was detrimental to like my confidence. And it started at the age of 7. I was a track and field athlete at 4, multi-sport and soccer. And I went on vacation with my parents, like a normal 7-year-old kid would do in the summertime. And I remember coming back and I had lost my spot on the 4x4 team. And I was like devastated to find out that I wasn't going to run on a 4x4 team. And if you're a track athlete, the 4x4 is the last event of a track meet. It's the biggest thing. Everyone watches. It's like pride to be a part of that. And my coach, and I was like, Coach, this isn't fair. Like, I'm one of the best in our age group, like of our 8 and under kids. If there was like, why are you not letting me be on this team? Just because I went on vacation. And he's like, well, you have to show dedication and commitment. And I'm like, okay. And so he goes, if you want to earn your spot back, you have to challenge a person on that relay team and run a 400 in front of all of us before practice. And when I say all of us, it was like 5-year-olds up till 18-year-olds, right? So I had to have the entire team sit on the bleachers and challenge another 7-year-old to go run in front of everyone. And of course I did because I wanted to be on the 4x4 team. But I remember thinking, like, this is a time in my life to choose what I want, but I could fail miserably in front of everyone, or I could get my thing. But then what's that going to do to my teammates? What are they going to experience? Because now I've earned a spot and they wanted to be on the spot. And now we have this social conflict at the age of 7. I did challenge her. I did win. And it was traumatic for this like social I was so nervous, so afraid to fail that then it set me up for the next parts of my life of like, you can't fail. You have to perform always. You have to be your best. You can't take time off. You can't go on vacation with your family, which is crazy standards at the age of 7 to start believing in. And that was just one example. That there was other examples I have of, you know, college running. I ran in college and sitting in the hallway where your coach comes down and says like what you're going to do that day and like what was your mileage the day before, how fast you ran. And if you're not running well, complete ignoring you. No eye contact, no calling you by your name, like no acknowledgement as if you even exist. And there could be weeks on end that you just show up, sit in the hallway, and get clumped together with a couple other girls, like, oh, you 3 go do this. And the isolation and loneliness you feel by not being recognized by a coach when all you're doing, even if you want to perform for yourself, is perform for your coaches, like to think that you're doing a great job, to have your coach value you. That is really, really hard to work through.
Wow. And what did you learn from that? Did you try to now help people that are in leadership? Because I know I coached a long time, so I'm sure I had my issues where I neglected a player or something, is
Yeah.
something I think I became more cognizant of. But tell me what you learned and how you share that today.
Yeah, it's a lot of the time. I try to think of both sides of the coin, right? It's easy for me to work with the athletes individually and have them find ownership and work through stuff. What I also try to do and what's missing is a lot of coach education. We spend a lot of time on coaching the athletes, and we're not coaching the coaches. And so for me, I'm like, if I'm going to fix a system, I have to work at all parts of the system. So trying to coach coaches, try to have them understand everyone has an intent to want to help, but when it comes into like wins and losses, and in some cases their job is relying on the wins or losses, there's a lot of pressure in the coach's domain as well. And so I have to empathize in that factor and acknowledge that coaches coach the way they've coached, and we have bracketed morality, that we allow things to exist in sport that we would not allow in other societies, that we would say that's not okay. Like I had a clipboard thrown at me in high school basketball, right, by a coach.
Wow.
You can't throw, a teacher can't throw a clipboard at a kid in the classroom, right? Like it just doesn't align. And we would have an uproar. But in sport, we allow it. We're like we're allowing it less. We see things not happening as much, but not to the level that we need to have happen. And so partly it's learned behavior from coaches that need to change. And there has to be a disruption and there has to be sanctions. But there also has to be a standard of coach education. And at different levels, not every rec level has to have a certain license or education to coach. It can be a volunteer parent. And so that's a whole different world that you're battling with when you have a volunteer parent and you're not sure what their level of expertise is, what they're, able to do. So then I also have to coach my parents to say, have you vetted out the coach and the organization you're joining? Do you know the standard of coaching education? Do you know what expectations you're expecting and what you're putting your child into? If you put them in a rec level that doesn't require background checks and no coach education, you're not going to go win the Little World Series. Like it's not going to happen. And so there's a lot of education that still has to exist, as well as a lot of standards of coach education and sanctions to limit some of these behaviors.
Mm. Well, I just couldn't help but imagine Bob Knight throwing that chair across the court, or
Right?
one of my icon Jim Boeheim ripping off that jacket and that iconic picture moment. Yet, but you're so true. We laugh about that, and it is just part of sports legacy across all sports, right, and across men's and women's sports. But at the same time, there are so many leaders who are able to exert authority yet also be more mild-mannered and be calmer under pressure. So what mindset does it take to have that confidence and what you need in sport to succeed, yet also have the wherewithal and the self-control not to totally lose your mind and potentially either put someone else in harm's way or just make a fool out of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many core mental skills. And back when I first started, I would have said this was the most important. But now, what I truly believe is an emotional regulation, the ability to understand your emotions and regulate them at certain levels. And there's times where you have to be amped up. And there's times that you have to be super calm. And it's a barometer, right? And I kind of use this as like the best analogy. It's like, what speed are you going, right? And when can you get into cruise control? And cruise control is like when everything's in flow state. We don't even have to think. It's just working for us. And so it comes down to a lot of self-awareness for the athlete and for the athlete to really tap in and say, okay, I know the technical play. I know how to physically work and train my body and recover. But now can I tap into that emotional component? Can I learn how to regulate? Can I do some mindfulness activities and breathing? And you have to teach both sides of it. It's not just be calm. I also have to teach people, how do they amp up? How do they get excited? How do they manage momentum? And if you have someone, a coach or an athlete, able to be grounded and take a breath and be present and figure out the situation, you're going to come back to have much more clarity and confidence in decision making. And for me, it's teaching them breath. Your breathing is the essential skill that regulates everything. Intentional breathing. We naturally breathe all the time without thinking, but intentional breathing allows you to get into a neural pathway and think differently and have more clarity and confidence and creativity and processing all the things we want and everything that we're trying to do. And once I teach them little cues like that, they're like, oh. And then I'm like, you only feel emotion for 90 seconds. Like, stop rerunning that play in your head. Like, let's get on a different neural pathway. And so once they know how their brain works and how they can control the emotion, then they're locked in. They can get into different zones a lot faster.
Hey, Hillary, because I've learned a lot about breath, breathing, and control, those type of things. Can you give us an example of something maybe you work with clients on a breathing technique?
Yeah, there's tons out there. There's chimney breathing, box breathing, 4-8-4 breathing. For me, the simplest thing, instead of getting caught up in all that, I call it triple threat breathing. One, because it sounds fun, and I used to play basketball. So triple threat is like we want to be that way. But I just teach them 3-3-3. So inhaling for 3 seconds, holding for 3 seconds, and exhaling for 3 seconds. And I tell them to do that for 3 times in a row, because the importance of holding at the top, why you want to hold, it's teaching your body to hold tension. And physiologically, when we have stress, we get tension. And then it's allowing you to relax and calm back down with that exhale. And so you're pre-teaching your body how to handle stress. And then when I tell them to do it 3 times, they immediately will feel a shift. And I'll always, if I do it in a big group setting, I'm like, hey, do we feel that? Because there is a shift in the room just by that 3 cycle breath. And then I teach the athletes like that was 27 seconds of our time that we just did, right? Now they might need to breathe for a lot longer. And I'll tell them, hey, when you're practicing this, you want to do it in a non-stressful situation. And I call it the 5 minute mind. Spend 5 minutes a day just sitting and breathing. And if you do that for an entire week, you will change the neural pathways in your brain. There's neuroscience behind it that talks about the neural pathway changes by just having 5 minutes a day. And then when they're in a game situation, or if they're having road rage, even it's a good example. I tell them, if you get stressed, if you're like late to a meeting and you're like, oh, the guy cut me off, I'm like, all you need to do is take 1 to 3 cycle breaths and you're good to go. And now it's applicable in every day before you go take a test, before you do a public speech, before you go present in a big meeting. Breathing is your best friend.
Interesting. So it's that 3-3-3, and then
Mhm.
there's that extra three because you're doing it 3 times, right?
Yeah.
What kind of transformation has that had in your life too, when you started becoming more cognizant and learning the neuroscience behind that?
It's allowed me to slow down. Being someone who's a go-getter, highly driven, fast-paced, I was a multi-sport athlete, collegiate athlete. I'm a high achiever. My personality fits the profile of a lot of our elite athletes. I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years of my life, right? 5 degrees, like all the things are just go, go, go. The next thing, I have 4 kids, like it doesn't stop. But when I learned to actually focus on this, the world feels slower and it feels like I'm in a lot more control and I can actually it's almost like the matrix. It sounds silly, but truly if you practice this, you're kind of like, oh, where do I need to focus my attention right now? I am in control of this. I am calm. And it doesn't feel as regulated in your body when you utilize the skills on a regular basis.
Very, very powerful. Yeah, well, I want to delve a little bit into the mental work, as I mentioned, and I'll give you a quick story. So, the best player I ever had, his senior season, we were in a semifinal in our postseason tournament, and he got fouled with 6 seconds to go on a three-point attempt down three, and he
Mm,
made all three, and we won in overtime. And I'll never forget because the reporter after the game, he was in the locker room, and I could overhear him say, Anthony, what were you thinking? He had to make all three free throws, and he says, we had done so many imagery sessions, I knew those were going in.
mm.
And so I know that they really bought into our mental imagery sessions. We did it before every game. But I'm curious, so what do you try to work with your athletes on some kind of mental preparation?
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone comes in with different. I call it mental mapping. I kind of check in and say, hey, is there a current issue you're working through? You want to be a starter? You're having pre-performance anxiety, whatever their issue is. Then we kind of map out their level of mental skills, and it always varies. But the core essence, like we talked about, emotional regulation. Understanding their intention for the day, right? Which leads to they've already tracked goals. And I don't spend a lot of time on goal charting for them and goal setting because they've all set a goal. The thing for me is write down your goal, put it on a board, and now we have to have attention. Like, are we doing enough today? So a lot of the times I'll do the man or the woman in the mirror. Can you look yourself in the eye at the end of the day and say, I did enough today? Right. Then we'll work on if we're doing true mental skills training, a lot of pre-performance routines. That part's pretty easy for my athletes. How do they get themselves mentally ready and emotionally ready? Listen to music, set an intention, do some breathing in the moment of performance. I do a lot of like reset mindset cues for them. So this helps their focus, that helps them lock back in. And so if they're getting frustrated, they all have a grounding technique. Do they fix their ponytail? Do they say a word? Do they touch their shorts? Do they have a visual script written on their wrist that they can look at? So there's a lot of in-game time resets for them. A lot of it is breath work. A lot of that is mantras, self-affirmations, or that tactile grounding. The one that a lot of people don't lean into, and I spend a lot of time in, is that post performance routine, the recovery phase on the physical side, but then the mental reflection. So a lot of my athletes will write down, what did I do well today? What do I need to improve on? It's still positive driven versus the reflecting in a negative way. It's like, what do I need to improve on? And then what's my plan? And if they reflect on that aspect and now they can release it and not hold on to a loss of a game or hold on to a bad practice. And then we've already set the intention for the next day. And if they're really struggling, I like to have them have like a win of the day or gratitudes. This one takes a lot of buy in because It seems hokey, just like breathing used to, but now everyone's kind of on the breathing train. But the gratitude journaling and gratitude shares, people are like, oh, I don't want to write these positive things. I'm like, listen, science will tell you it works. You just got to do it. So I try to get creative with how they want to do it. Do they want to put it on a post-it note where it's a gratitude? Do they share it around the dinner table with each other? Do they share it as a team? But releasing some positives. And so those are some simple cues for sure that are the mental game that just are standard practice that these athletes do every single day. And if you listen to it, it is every single day, like 3 to 5 things that you're working on, which is no different than the 3 to 5 things you have to do physically. So it takes a lot of time if you're really going to elevate. It's a complete holistic package to really be the best at this level.
I have to ask you this, Dr. Cauthen, because this a lot of changes have happened over the years in
Yeah.
sports, right? And being a female athlete yourself, I mean, we see now women's basketball has really become more popular thanks to some of the great stars, right? And the national championship yesterday, as we record this, very high ratings, and that's been more the norm lately, right?
Yeah.
Which is good. But growing up, let's take you back to when you were 7 years old, and
Mhm.
even for young girls today, there's still, I'm guessing, are some more challenges for young girls as opposed to young boys growing up pursuing sports. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges and even the potential traumas, even if they're mini traumas that young girls might have to navigate when young boys don't necessarily have to go through them.
There's a lot of ceilings that I even broke through, and more before me, women were breaking through it. And after me, women are going to be breaking through these ceilings, right? Because it's just a different dynamic. But, a lot of my role models, as I wish I could have said I had a lot of female athletes to aspire to, but I had a lot of male athletes that I was looking at and wanting to be like and pretending to be like, whether that was based on the sport that I played or not. I mean, some greats I still had, like Mia Hamm was a phenomenal soccer player. And I was like, yeah, we're all going to be like Mia Hamm, right? But that's the female soccer player that no one could name anyone else unless it was Brittany Chastain. And the only reason why we can name her is because she ripped her shirt off in celebration, which is what males do. But because she was a female, it was like glorified in this crazy way and sexualized and all this things around it. And so when there was stuff, not a lot of talk was about women. And if it was about women, it was like in a more pretty way or a nice way, or what do it wasn't in the same context of physical aggression and assertion and how we played the game. And I specifically remember I was 10 and I was watching this male teammate of mine. He was a couple years ahead and he was steeplechasing. And at the time, women couldn't steeplechase in college or high school. It wasn't allowed until like the 2000s. And I went into college in 2002. So like I broke that barrier. But I remember thinking the 10K and the steeplechase, women couldn't do. And I was a young distance runner. And I was like, well, I want to do those things. I want to do what the men are doing. Like, I can't play football. Like, can I do the sport? And like, there was just still these rules around what we believe women's bodies were not able to do. And I think inadvertently being coached in a male dominated world of sport by male coaches, not knowing the female body, the research still is so limited on the female body, it didn't shape me up to be the best athlete. Like, I didn't start lifting weights or understanding the foods to intake for my body literally until like about 2 years ago. Like, I'm in my like 40, a 40-year-old woman not knowing how to lift or eat or what's right for my body because it wasn't trained that way. And imagine if we trained the female body, we can reduce the ACL injuries. We could have strengthened the components to allow me to be physically stronger and faster, knowing my body type. And the biggest one, which is traumatic that people never talk about, the uniforms for women athletes. We cannot have white shorts any longer or light gray shorts. Females have menstrual cycles, and the embarrassment that comes as a high school athlete when you randomly start your menstrual cycle because we just can't prepare and you're in a game. I remember being in a basketball game, white shorts, and I started my cycle and I was like, oh my word. And I had to run in at halftime, try to find a pair of shorts. You can't talk to your male coach because he can't even say the word tampon or pads. Like, that's embarrassing to him. We didn't have athletic trainers who had a bag that was there. Like, I'm searching through like lockers trying to find something. And it seems so mundane. It's a simple thing that every woman has to go through. And now these female athletes start their menstrual cycle far earlier, like in middle school. And so we have to have resources for how to make sure they know where they can go, for what they need for their feminine hygiene, where their uniforms are, so they're not embarrassed with the whole school watching you and you're like, oh, like that was traumatic. Those are
Yeah.
instances that are everyday life things that impact you.
Yeah, it's a powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you mentioned you have four children. All
Hmm.
right, you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Uh, Help us leaders because what do we call it? Work-life balance, integration. I've heard all kinds of different words, but tell us. Give some insight to help young leaders with when they're balancing their work situation, especially if they're starting a business as it
Right.
was working with their family. How do you do it?
Yeah, and I have four daughters, so that is another task ahead. Every time I say that, I'm like, "Ooh, four daughters." One, I am blessed. Like I wanted to have four children. I knew that from the jump. As much as I love my career and passion, like I wanted to be a mother. I'm thankful that I have a partner who knew we were gonna have four kids, even though he wanted three. He's like, "Okay, we're having four." But he also knew the driven and what I wanted to do for my job. Um, Being a business owner was not the initial plan. But where the field was, no one wanted a clinical sports psychologist when I came out in 2013. And I was able to just go do that, which is great. I couldn't do it without a team, though, right? Without my husband and I making sacrifices and choices when you're starting up a business. There's time away from the family, right? There's time where we're passing ships. When I first started, I remember I was going to see my clients in the evenings and I'd be at home with the kids during the day and then we'd rotate, right? So we didn't really see each other until like we were sleeping because he's working a 9 to 5 and then he gets the kids and that was crazy. And then I would work evenings or weekends because I'm trying to build up the clientele or I'd have another job as I was building the business. um, and we got to a point after four where we're like, okay, we need some help. So we have an au pair who lives with us, which helps us kind of navigate the system. But this was the life that we chose, right? We knew the dreams we wanted to have. We had a team plan together. And there's very important things in our life beyond just work. Our families first. And what does the family values mean? And how do we have family time? For me personally, I still work out every single day. That's very essential. But I have to communicate like, when can I work out? When you run your own business, the beautiful thing is you get to schedule stuff, which is great for me. But I've noticed over the 18 years, I've shifted now as my kids got older that I'm going to work 2 evenings late, and the other 2 evenings, I'm not going to work late, right? I'm going to be able to be there for the kids if I have to. I'm going to rotate time. I don't work weekends anymore. Like that's essential time for the family. And so there's sacrifices and choices you make that allow you to understand how does this ship work? How do we navigate? And we're very intentional that we're going to date at least once a month, which is not a lot, but we're at least going to have a date once a month where we go out of the house. We take family time together. We individualize our kids as well. So we individual time, which is very important for them to feel valued. So we're busy. We choose to be busy though, right? And the balanced life doesn't mean sit and rest. For us, it's being balanced and filling my buckets of where's my spirituality, where's the love and family and social connection, where's my personal quiet time, where's my work time, like are all of the buckets fueled? um, and can we navigate and communicate? And then I think the biggest thing is when we need to take a time out and say, hey, I need to take a time out. Like the family knows. My kids know when I'm getting overwhelmed. They know when they need their own timeouts. And so we just kind of take space and we're like, I'm just gonna go take 5 minutes. And we all just kind of take our cool downs when we need to. But I think because like a team, our family team has a culture and a value and a system that we believe in. And we function through that together. And I think that's what makes things work a little bit easier for us.
Mm. Wow. I'm sure you've taught your kids the triple threat breathing techniques,
Oh,
right?
we called it cool down breaths when they were little kiddos. I'm like, hey, you need to take a cool down breath because they were getting too hot. And so they know they're breathing outside. My 8-year-old, she's my third kiddo in order. She is like a mindfulness guru. She sits and she just does her like breathing. She's like,
Wow.
Mom, I just need to feel the wind on my face. I'm like, I love you. Like, this is amazing. So I love when I hear them get it, right? Or they tell their
Mhm.
friends, hey, just take a deep breath right now. It's like beautiful to me.
The benefits of having somebody as a parent who's an expert in that. That's
Yeah.
so cool. And so when it comes to family time and balancing those four kids with all your professional work and everything that you do, what kind of communication does that take as well in a
Mhm.
family too? I mean, when we think of leadership, we think of teams and professional, but we also have a personal life that we are a leader in. We're a leader of ourselves and we're a leader in our family and our personal relationships. What kind of communication does that take to ensure that you're filling up all those buckets adequately?
Yeah. Partly it's like our routines, but we're really big on adaptability and flexibility. But every time that we have stuff going on, as my kids have gotten older, like I was away for 12 days a month sometimes for a sport team I was working for. And then I stopped that and I had an opportunity for another team to join. And I sat down with the kids. I said, "Hey, this is an opportunity for mom. Like, are we on board or not? This is what it's going to look like. Here's when I'm going to be gone. What do you think?" And they're like, "Yes, let's do it. We support you. We support your dreams. Let's go do this, mom." But everything's like a family discussion and a decision and a plan because I want them to understand, why am I choosing to be away from them? Like, I'm choosing to be away from my kids. What's my intent and why? And how do they still feel valued and important? I have an upcoming trip coming up this week and I'll be gone for 3 days. And so my little 5-year-old's like, "No, mom, I don't want you to leave." And I'll stop and I'll say, "Okay, let's talk about why mommy's going. What am I doing over there? What's my purpose? And how does that help us as a family?" And then she'll get the bigger picture. And we talked to them about finances, goals, work, what my work is about, how this helps them. And I'm modeling to them that I love them no matter where I am. And how can we connect when I'm gone, and what makes them feel special, and what's changing in their life? Because their routines are pretty much the same, just me not there. And so they have a good understanding around that. And days are hard for sure. But it still is a healthy balance. I was able to work through the mom guilt, because moms get a lot of guilt more than the fathers, um, of being the one that left. And if it was dad leaving, it would feel different. And moms have a different emotional component, but I also tell them, like, dad's an amazing dude. Like, dad's helping you, man. He's here. Like, you're great. You got everything you need. Like, but call me if you need me. Um, and we found little tricks on that way. But for me, I was able to say, no, I'm setting a model for my children to know it's okay to have your dreams. It's okay to do the things you love as well, and still come back and be there for your kids.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. So, first of all, I have one last question. I know John will have something as well, and we really appreciate your insights today, Hillary. But you mentioned in your bio about personal development, and you
Mhm.
also mentioned, which is something I always talk to leaders about, is that you have to have energy, and that means you got to take care of yourself. And I appreciate that you always find time to exercise, because that was one of the things that was one of my first non-negotiables. I was going to exercise every day. And my wife knows that, my son knows that, my team knows that, my whatever. So, but with that in mind, what do you do to grow yourself, and how do you work with your clients in helping them with their own personal development?
Yeah, so I'm really big on continuous learning and finding new ways to learn. So I will read or audiobook things outside of my specialty. I'm really important to want to learn in different areas, because I believe a lot of it interdisciplinary care. And so I want to understand a lot of things in that way. I have a constant consultation group that I check in with and consult. And then I try to attend 1 to 2, and this is a recent thing, but I try to attend 1 to 2 different professional development, like seminars or conferences or summits outside of my daily, what I always go to annually, because I want to push myself and be uncomfortable. It's really hard to go into a space when it's not your domain, your comfort, knowing anyone and trying to network and connect. So I want to get that uncomfortable feeling. But then I want to learn and I want to engage and connect and be a thought leader outside of my box. So I'm always trying to do those things. And then I constantly compete too, because that helps me be relatable to the clients that I'm working with. And for the athletes to come in, for me, it's the same thing. We model a lot of things. Of what way are they growing? How are their passions? How are they taking care of themselves? I mean, they're coming in to work with me as a psychologist and therapist for their own time, so they're already getting that personal growth. But I expand of how do they connect that to their life? How do they apply those skills, and how do they reach beyond what we're doing in our room that allows them to fill those buckets and feel fulfilled?
Well, I got just last question for me is delve a little deeper. Is So is there a person, female, male, doesn't matter, that's either an author or someone you've heard speak or has a great podcast, somebody that you kind of your go-to person that you would recommend for our audience?
I love Simon Sinek's stuff. I listen to a
Mhm.
lot of Simon Sinek. Ryan Holiday has really great books that I've leaned into. So those are two really great ones. My backup, when I always have to go back to it, the best book, I got it when I was a doctoral student. It's called The Tao of Pooh. So I'm a huge Winnie the Pooh fan, and this is
Okay.
based on like Buddhism and martial arts and Taoism. And so it connects that through Winnie the Pooh. So that's a great book to read.
I know as an athlete, Dr. Cauthen, one of the challenges is continuing that healthy lifestyle after being that competitive athlete. And you say you find ways to compete, and you
Yeah.
also said that you exercise every day, and that's a non-negotiable for you too, like coach. So talk a little bit about what you've done since being a college athlete to stay healthy, to even outside of that more rigid and structured environment of exercise to make that still a daily habit to continue because we see that a lot with athletes who
Yeah.
now don't have that structure and kind of fall off.
I think it was, it was really hard to transition out of the competitive environment. And the rite of passage for distance runners is go run a marathon. And I was
Mm.
like, cool. But the funny thing for me is I hate running. I just love racing. So it's like the funny thing. Like I put me on a track. I love track running, but it's really hard as a dog. You can do some master track running, but it's not as the same. Um, so I did 9 marathons, which was crazy. I did this rite of passage after every kid before they turned 1. I was going to run a marathon, not healthy, but I did all the things. And then I went back into my roots of soccer. And so I played a lot on women's and co-eds team for soccer, indoor and outdoor. I played on some women's basketball teams. And it wasn't fulfill me the same way because those were all things that I was new and natural about. And so a year and a half ago, a crazy thing, like I said, I never lifted. Started lifting, and this new fad of high rocks, if you've heard of it, which is like endurance CrossFit. It's like functional movements, like the new takeover, the hybrid athlete. And so it has this 5 miles of running, but now there's like these strength components of lifting you have to do. And it's a race and it's how fast you can do it. And I started doing that and now I'm addicted. And you can do it individually, you can do it with a partner, you can do it with a mixed partner, you can do relays. And so the community very much mirrors to me the running community. It's very inclusive. Everybody's welcome. They encourage you, but it is the hardest competition I've ever done. It's the hardest training I've ever done. And so that's exciting to me is how good can I get at this new thing?
Wow, so cool. And so I'm imagining that you're also when you say you're a pretty competitive person, it sounds like. Are you also competitive with yourself too? And you feel like that can be a benefit for athletes?
100%. We're our worst critic. Every athlete that I've ever met, every high achieving human is the worst critic, has the most negative self-talk in their heads, and the one like we very started with, actually really low self-confidence, self-belief. And so once you can work through that and build up your self-confidence and criticize your way in a different way, I still want to be the best. I also have a reality of where am I coming from and what does my best look like and who am I performing for now? So I'm not the best at this sport, but when I get a huge PR, I'm like, this is amazing. I just beat my goal by 4 minutes. Like, let's celebrate. It's like so rewarding when you actually push yourself. And so there's been days in the gym where, and I hired a trainer, so I have my own coach because I know myself and I'm better if I have someone pushing me. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. I feel like a failure. I can't get out of it. And I have to work really hard on all the skills to get myself back on track and be like, that was just a day. Let's go have a better day tomorrow or next week. And understand. I've leaned into understanding the cycles of my body, the cycles of lifting, knowing when I'm going to have good days and tired days. And so that's really helpful. Education is a beautiful tool when you learn about how your body and mind works, and then you're a little bit nicer to yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. Wow. It's a lot of good stuff. And I know one thing that we can immediately take away from this episode is that triple threat breathing method that, and you mentioned something earlier. I know we got to close, but you said that your emotions only last for 90 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane because you think that it's like the number one thing is, oh, this is gonna last forever. Oh, I'm terrible. We make like permanent judgments based on temporary results, and
Yes.
so that breathing can get us back to our baseline again. So much stuff that you shared with us, and I know there's so much more that you could share too. So your book, and then all the other information, where can we find out more about your work?
Yeah, so my book, Hello Trauma, Our Invisible Teammates, on Audible, Amazon, or Barnes& and Noble. Dr. C Mindset at Instagram. I actively am posting and educating there. I have a podcast as well called The Highs and Lows of X's and O's. So that's a fun thing that you can tune into. And then my website has a lot of events. We do a lot of mastermind professional development at www.txopps.com. And, fun fact for leadership, for women leaders, I have a mastermind women's leadership event in September, women's only, very intimate professional development. So check out that website, reach out to me DMs and find out about that.
Awesome.
Lots of stuff going on. Dr. Hillary
Yeah.
Cauthen, links down in the show notes. Thanks so much for your time today and for everything you shared with our young and emerging leaders.
Yeah, thank you.